was a stormy night. The sky was covered in thick, dark clouds, and the rain was coming down in heavy sheets, making it nearly impossible to see the road ahead. James Carter, a seasoned truck driver, was making his way down Route 87 in Arizona. This road was long, empty, and unsettlingly quiet. No other cars in sight, just James and his truck. He sighed, reaching over to turn on the radio, hoping for some company on this lonely drive. But the moment he switched it on, then he saw her, a girl, standing by the side of the road, drenched in rain, wearing a white dress, her hair clinging to her face. She was shivering, and she was holding out her hand, asking for a ride. James hesitated for just a moment. Something about her seemed off, but he wasn't the kind of man to leave someone stranded in the middle of nowhere. He slowed down, rolled down the window, and called out, "Hey there, you okay? Need a ride?" She nodded. No words, just a slow, hesitant nod. Without waiting, she climbed into the truck, closing the door behind her. For the first few minutes, she just sat there, silent, staring out the window. James cleared his throat, trying to break the eerie silence. "Where you headed?" A pause, and then, "Home." Her voice was barely audible over the rain. James glanced at her again. Her face was pale, too pale. Her hands resting in her lap looked almost lifeless. Something about her made his skin crawl. And then, she spoke again, slow, foreboding tone. "Be careful on this road. A lot of people don't make it past the next turn." James forced out a nervous chuckle. "Yeah, I've heard those stories, but I've been driving this route for years. Nothing's ever happened to me." She didn't respond. She just kept staring, her eyes fixed on the dark road ahead. And then, James looked away for just a second, just long enough to adjust the radio. When he looked back, she was gone. The seatbelt, still fastened. The door, still locked. She had vanished into thin air. James slammed the brakes, his truck skidding slightly before coming to a halt. His breathing was heavy, his heart pounding in his chest. He checked the back seat. Nothing. He stepped out into the rain, shining his flashlight into the darkness. "Hello? Where did you go?" But there was no one. No footprints, no sign that anyone had been there at all. Shaken, James climbed back into his truck and sped toward the nearest town. When he finally reached a small roadside diner, he walked in, still trembling. He needed answers. The waitress behind the counter noticed his pale face and said, "You okay, sir?" James nodded quickly, wiping the rain off his face. I just picked up this girl. She was standing on the side of Route 87, but then she just disappeared." The waitress's face froze. Her eyes widened. What did she look like?" James said dryly. "Young, maybe 19, blonde hair, white dress. She said she was going home." The waitress slowly turned and reached under the counter. She pulled out an old newspaper, unfolded it, and slid it across the counter. James stared at the page. It was her, a black and white photo of the same girl he had picked up. The headline read, "Local girl killed on Route 87. Hitchhiker's ghost still haunts the highway." The article said her name was Emily Parker. She had died in a car accident on that very stretch of road exactly 20 years ago. James whispers to himself, "No, that can't be real." But it was. And then, a flicker. The lights in the diner dimmed for just a second. James turned around, his body frozen with fear, because in the reflection of the diner's window, she was standing right behind him. James Carter never drove Route 87 again, but even today, drivers still report picking up a young girl in white, only for her to vanish moments later. If you ever find yourself driving down that road and you see her, would you stop?